Go where your best prayers take you, unclench the fists of your spirit and take it easy. Breathe deeply of the glad air and live one day at a time. Know that you are precious and learn to trust. Amen. Well, good morning to all of you on this Labor Day weekend. I hope you can kind of just sit and breathe out a little bit. You'll notice the choir has the day off. EJ fired Jason. That's what I heard anyway. No, she said, take a day off. You know, he works all the time. That's very sweet of you, EJ, to let him hang out a little bit with his family today. Maybe he's over at his other home, Church Street, with his wife, worshiping. I hope so. Lots going on. You know, we have our group up at the mountains. They're up at the Rogers National Forest for our annual, they do the annual camp out. It's really a lot of fun. Hopefully they had less rain yesterday than we did. I hope so. But they'll have church today, or probably having church right now together. And then many of them will come home tomorrow. So prayers for their safe travels and everyone across our nation. But Labor Day is always a something, and I was thinking about that, obviously, for the last couple of weeks. And a story that I ran across just kept looping in my head. I kept putting it down. It just kept coming back. It's one of those, it's kind of interesting how that works when you do this business. But I thought, well, maybe I need to tell that story. And it has a lot, I think, that about what's been going on for the last couple of weeks. There was a man, true story, he was sitting at his breakfast table doing what many of us do, is up already, showered, had his suit on, drinking coffee, looking at the paper. Sitting in his little breakfast nook looking outside. It had been raining. He lives in Andover, Ohio. His name is Ray Blankenship. Kind of normal morning, except that it had been raining for a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, and he realized as he looked out his window, kind of across the street, down past his neighborhood and on down, that the drainage ditch looked awfully full and rather dangerous. He said he realized he could see the water kind of lapping out, and he thought, good gracious, that doesn't look good. What he didn't know at the same time that he was drinking his coffee and about to go off to work, the 2 little girls next door, Samantha and Jessica Jones, were playing Foursquare in their driveway. Samantha's the older sister, she's 8, and Jessica's 2. They were headed off to school shortly. But he thought he saw something. He realized all of a sudden he was distracted from the paper. He looked up and he couldn't figure out what he was seeing. And Jessica was chasing the ball down the driveway, across the street, straight to the drainage ditch. And he realized that she was running so fast, she wasn't going to stop. And sure enough, when she hit the mud, she slid right in. And he didn't hesitate. Paper down, door open, flew across the street, suit and everything, running as fast as he could. And as fast as he could run, he said he's a 40-something, a little overweight, he realized, I'm not going to catch her. And he realized he couldn't go in where she went in. He had to run down the drainage ditch as fast as he could to try to catch up. And he said he was just running like an Olympian trying to get there. And he about out of breath, and he caught her going under and popping up, and he just dove and threw himself in. Miraculously, he grabbed her by the arm. The second miracle was that as soon as he grabbed her, he saw a boulder coming up straight up on him, and he braced himself, hit the boulder, grabbed her, pulled her around, and they were kind of wedged then in the force of the water. And he realized the water was way over his head. Why that's important is about no more than about 25 feet away, that drainage ditch pours into the main north culvert for the city. And in another 50 feet, it goes underground for 200 yards. And he realized they were perilously close to both dying. And somehow he was able to wedge himself and start working his way up the side of the rock, because he realized if they stayed long, he would not be able to hold on to her, because she was like a rag doll. She would swing around, he'd pull her back. She'd swing around, he'd pull her back. He wedged himself and pushed himself up enough to get settled, and then pushed himself kind of on the bank and dragged her up. And he was exhausted, and she was too. In fact, she was kind of semi-conscious. She had swallowed so much water. And about that time, the rescue squad arrived, grabbed him, took him to the hospital. Everything turned out wonderfully. Child's fine. He was fine. Rather hair-raising, to say the least. He was awarded after that by the head of the local Coast Guard, the Coast Guard Life-Saving Medal of Honor. It is a military honor, never bestowed upon a civilian, but was bestowed upon him. was Paul Harvey who told this story years ago and made his small story rather famous. What was fascinating, as Paul Harvey always kind of had that little twist, why Ray was so important to the Coast Guard and to everybody is he could not swim and still cannot today. So what is that? What is that we see in him? Well, I'd say to you simply that we have seen it in spades in Houston and Texas. We have seen Ray Blankenship in spades across that land. We have seen people rescuing people, helping people, doing selfless acts, fearless acts, putting themselves in danger again and again and again, and we're watching it. But I'm saying it to you so that you don't miss it, because I think we have. As much as we say it, I'm not sure we really catch it. These mostly were ordinary people. Yes, the Coast Guard was full speed ahead. And do they do miraculous things, flying those helicopters in places that are just treacherous and dangerous, one after another, never stopping. And all the support people, all the police, all the fire people, hard at work. But how many civilians turned out? The Cajun Navy, people coming with trucks, people everywhere. One of my favorite pictures was on CNN. You may have seen it. They showed that scene, and it was really kind of almost the aftermath, and you think it's over. Oh, no, it was just beginning. The water's still rising. They're looking down a street that now looks like a river, and there are hundreds and hundreds of people coming, and then they pan in, and there's this huge black man. I mean huge, 6'4", 6'5", big muscular, and he's got this very elderly couple in their yellow slickers, top and bottom, keeping them above the water as he pushes his way forward. I was just touched by it. Or this other great story that was reported, a woman, the cell phones are still working, so people are calling real time. So she calls in and says, my house is going underwater, and I'm here with my elderly mother, and tells where she lives. And she says, I've tried to get outside. It's 8 feet or 9 feet deep in my yard, and it's already 4 feet in the house, and it's rising. We're on the steps. And did you hear who came to get her? The local rabbi in his boat. Isn't that great? And I went, whoa, we are missing what is unfolding here. This is incredible. Are these people heroes? No, they're normal people like you and me. These were normal people. We have witnessed something of epic proportion, and it's the not amount of rain. It is the amount of goodness and kindness and love and courage in simple people. And we have seen mega doses of it. A small glimpse of our entire society. And I don't know about you, but it's enough to say amen and sit down probably. It is very, very powerful. See, I think they're ordinary people because they get it. People like that get it because they are connected. They are connected. Connected people respond to other people. It's that simple. You don't have to trigger it. You don't have to incentivize it. They do it naturally. How many, go back and look. I challenge you, go back and how many people were interviewed, and when they said, why are you doing this? They said, it's what I'm supposed to do. This is just what I do. Didn't even take credit for what they had done, nor any kind of personal energy or ego about it. Just what they do. Amazing. See, most people, I'm a positive person. I think most people often think of others first. Whether we act is another thing. Back to Houston for just a moment. What's also interesting for me and has been and kind of played out this week has been just the energy level of the press, the media. It's kind of always interesting. But there's one story that I know you heard, we did, and it kind of captured Tom and me and Chris all week long, was the report of one of the largest mega churches in the world kind of not jumping to the front quickly, dragging their feet just a little bit. What was interesting to us, I don't know what you took away from that, was how much negative energy there was instantly toward the church and the pastor. It was phenomenal. Look at the Twitter. I mean, I don't know where he falls in the line, but he may be below Hitler. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it was like, whoa, what is this energy? I mean, I get that maybe they didn't respond quickly, but there was a powerful energy about it. And we really were paying attention to it, so I've read a lot about it to try to get a feel about it. Basically, it was just that they hadn't opened their doors. They've got a church that seats 16,000. They had a little water in the basement, and they weren't opening their doors. They told people to go down the street. As it turned out, I think it was legitimate that the city probably was saying to them, make sure that you can take care of people before you take them in. I do really get that. But boy, once that story was told, as you know, there was no way to get in front of it. They were all behind it. And you know, they're a wealthy congregation. They just finished a $95 million, I challenge you, $95 million renovation. I'm ready for that. So, you know, you get where the energy comes from. There really was a question whether the building was safe. But boy, I'll tell you now, if you see what they're doing, they are knocking it out of the park. Man, they are a powerhouse of good for what's going on. And it made me think, it got us to talking about what would happen here, to be quite honest. And I knew exactly. Right or wrong, we would have opened the doors immediately. We had water below us in the basement, we'd open the doors. It might not have been the smart thing. It might not have even been the right thing. I mean, you do need flushing toilets, water, food if you take people in. You don't bring them into not sanitary conditions. But there's no doubt that you all would have stepped to the plate. And I have to tell you, that has resonated with me for an entire week. I thought, that's the community I live in. No doubt about it. There wouldn't have been any doubt that people, if we, the staff, hadn't responded, it wouldn't have mattered. Y'all would have already been here with your own fobs and keys, unlocking, putting the welcome sign out. We're not special. I'm trying to point out something simple that we might miss. You see, it's human to care about humans. Let me say that again. It is human to care about humans. That is how we are made. Now, I don't know what happens, you know, when our own fears and anxieties get kicked in, and what blocks that human quality, and it does get blocked. But that's another sermon, another time maybe we could converse about. But let me go back to the negative press. Do you understand what that means? Do you understand how society sees the church? How does the church see us? They have these huge expectations on you and me and the church. It's like we're a public institution. Do you catch that? They treat us like we're public. We're private, but we're public. Why? Why do they do that? On this mega church, why aren't you doing what? The people writing may not have been doing anything. But you understand, on the Christians, they had these huge expectations. Not only to be human, but to even be superlative humans. Don't miss, that's part of where we are in society today. It is a big deal. And I, in fact, have to say I think we've earned the reputation. We are, in a way, part of the kind of very fabric of our society. We really are more like a public institution than we are private institutions. And lots of churches forget that. We do forget that sometimes. It says volumes about our country, about how important religion is still for us and with us. But it is intriguing, isn't it? You know, again, I really do believe that humans care about humans. You know, if I were vain, I am kind of pretty vain, but if I were real vain, I would show you all the pictures of my grandbaby, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to tell you a story. So this is her first week of school. I can't believe she's old enough to do some daycare. First day went well. The second day did not go well. She had figured out I'm being left here. So she was a death grip on Mama Tiffany. And so she was holding her and wouldn't let her put her down. And then she looked over and there was a little boy standing by himself crying, inconsolable, wouldn't let anybody hold him, anybody touch him. He was miserable. And Andy, my grandbaby, shook her mama and wanted down. And she was trying to figure out, she let her down. She went over and got a teddy bear and took it over to the little boy. But then she raced right back and jumped in her mother's arms and said, "Don't put me down." I mean, she's not special. You get the point. It is inside us. Andy's not exceptional. I'm proud that she's that way and gets it. That's intuitive, comes from family, extended family, and community. But that's how we are. And something blocks that sometimes. People see that in us, but let me tell you, not only do they see that and expect that more out of us, we've outed ourselves. We're out. We say it all the time. Pick up Romans, please. Look quickly at what we just said. People know we say this stuff. They expect that we believe this stuff. And you know what they hope? They hope that we live this stuff. And then they project that we will live this stuff. Do you follow that? So when we say this stuff publicly, what do you expect? Expect to catch some grief when you don't act this way. I have. Bet you have. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with affection. Show honor. Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit. Rejoice in hope. Patient in suffering. Persevere in prayer. Contribute to the needs of all. Extend hospitality to strangers. You see, on Labor Day, we're reminded of our labor. This is what we're about. I know we do a lot of other stuff. And I know in so many ways we've spent a lot of time in the modern era. I'll be quite honest, 36 years of my ministry has been fighting about some ism, ISM. But I got to be honest with you. In my heart, this is what it's about. Maybe my heresy. This is what it's about. And you know, it's not real complicated, some of that stuff. It's often very simple. We don't need lots of commissions. We don't need lots of studies. We don't need to spend millions of dollars to do surveys. It's simply to let the love that God has put in you, the kindness that God has planted in you and me, well, just let it have some exposure. Let it out. And you know, some of those examples are so close at hand. Some of you have heard this story, so I apologize, but it truly is. It was one of the best learnings I've ever had, and so it is a deep and important part of my journey. So I'm going to tell you this story. If you've heard it, again, nod off or something. It was a Friday afternoon. I was here alone in the office, and I was the last one out. I was locking up, and never will forget it. It was a beautiful day. It was in September, and the parking lot was empty except for one car in the park, and there was one car literally in the middle of the parking lot, which is unusual. My car and this one car. And I looked, and I could tell as I was putting my stuff in and kind of looking over my shoulder, there was a lot of energy around that car, and I was trying to figure out what I was seeing, and it was about 4 rows away from me. And I stood there, and I thought, and unusual for me, I made myself stand still, because normally, you know what I do is I go to stuff, which is not a virtue. I mean, I just kind of start moving. And this time I stood still, and I thought, what am I seeing? And I realized I was seeing a woman struggling mightily to get out of a wheelchair into her car by herself. Well, I was kind of captured, and I went, good, great. I thought, how's she going to do this? And I was trying to figure out what's she going to do with the wheelchair. And about that time, I looked up, and our sexton came out of the gray door, and I was down the other end. And I watched, and Michael, who worked for us for some time, came out. Now, Michael's an interesting story. He was not a Christian, never done church, but he worked here for a long time and would talk a lot about watching you all and what we were. So we were his learning about how church functions. You all were teaching him what Christians are. And there's a fleeting, and I have no idea, but that fleeting thought went through my mind. And so I stood really still and thought, John, this is a time you don't do a thing. So I watched our sexton in his work clothes, he's kind of dirty from the day, go across. He walked over to the car. He walked to the hood, and I could tell he was just not walking up on her. He was talking to her. He went around to her, and then I saw him very lovingly take her out of her wheelchair and put her behind the wheel. And then take her wheelchair, fold it up, get the keys, put it in the trunk, come back around and just stand and talk to her. And I've got to tell you, it was pretty rich. I thought, yeah, that's who we are. And maybe, just maybe, Michael saw us at work. Maybe, just maybe, we incentivize that just a little bit with some of the behavior he sees this place about. All of us together, not always doing it, but trying our best to step up, to be ardent, to have zeal, to have this compassion and passion about faith that moves beyond something in my brain and ends up something in my hands and my legs and my arms. And it was in his. I'll tell you, if we just do a little of that, the world will be better, and already is. And it will always have great expectations for us. Maybe we will have great expectations for ourselves. Have a great Labor Day. Amen.